A short while ago, I took an experimental trip into the Kalahari to explore some new ways of travelling. Now, I took the trip on my own to see if, firstly, I would enjoy being on my own, and secondly, if I could make a movie about it on my own.
It's really difficult to do, to film and drive at the same time. It's virtually impossible because I need to change gear. Okay, maybe this will be good.
The results were, well, not what I expected, nevertheless enlightening.
Well, I've arrived in the Southern Kalahari. My first night alone in the wilderness. It's taken 3 days for me to drive from my hometown to get here, and I think I'm pretty lucky that I can find a place this remote that close to home, even though it is 3 days. And it is here that I am beginning my sole lone journey through the Kalahari. Well, and getting here was actually quite a mission because I didn't find out about whether the reserve gate closes, what time it closes. So I arrived at Gaborone and got a little bit lost in the city, and then took an extra half hour to get through there, and eventually got on the open road, and the road deteriorated. It got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I was looking at my watch and it was approaching 4:30, and the last bit I was really gunning it. And I arrived there and I walked in, and there they were, still taking bookings. What bookings? I don't know. There's nobody around. And I walked in and there they were, and they said, no, we close at 6:30. So for the first time since leaving home, I can really relax. Now the first thing I've got to do is disconnect the battery. I have two batteries, and I elected to take out the complicated electronic system that cuts the one battery out and replaced it with this, a simple switch. And what I do with the switch is I remove it when the two batteries are disconnected. It means at night the main battery is safe. It will start the car in the morning no matter how much current the fridge takes from the second battery, which is now disconnected from it. And I put this inside the cab, so when I start the engine, that tells me the batteries aren't connected. On this trip we're camping in the wilderness. This is a little bit of an exception, and there are facilities there, basic facilities, a long drop toilet and a shower. No water, but it's a cubicle for privacy where you can hang a water container. And they chose a very interesting place to publicize the do's and don'ts of camping in Kutsi. Let me show them to you. This is the long drop toilet. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I read in the loo. Well, you can read here too. There's the long drop toilet, and there is something to read. All the do's and don'ts of camping in the Kutsi. I wonder what the hotel council grading system would make of this. It's a shower for midgets. One of the things I really would have liked to have done on the way here was let my tyre pressures down because it was quite sandy. But racing, so I just put up with a cacophony of rattles because the suspension is hard anyway, and with the hard tyres, 3 bar at the back and 2.5 at the front. So the first thing I'm going to do tomorrow morning before I set up is let them right down. I was just filming the sunset a minute ago, and a small antelope just came out of the bush, came right here close to me. Actually gave me a bit of a fright because I heard the rustling in the grass, and I thought, what is that? Small doka-sized antelope, very reddish in colour. Jackal. Now I hope you can hear that. That sound, that's the Silverback Jackal. And I'm hoping we're going to see them, a fox-like animal, very common in the Kalahari. And it is a book called the cry of the Kalahari that is the motivation for this trip. And the cry of the Kalahari in the book actually means two things. The cry being the cry of the jackal, which is so synonymous with the Kalahari. And the other cry of the Kalahari is a cry for the Kalahari to be protected as a natural, pristine wilderness, which much of it still is. Well, here I am, first night alone, cooking myself a little bit of meat. I'm actually thawing it out because the freezer is working so well. It's rock solid. I didn't think it would be working quite so well considering the short time the meat has been in the freezer, but it's rock solid. My heart is beating. I was just next to the fire, next to the car. It's about 7:30, just relaxing. I heard the strange noise. There's a lion, and he's right here. He started roaring. So, I had stuff outside, all the car doors were open, and I didn't think that there would be a lion around. So, I quickly ran around, closed all the car doors, and I'm sitting in the driver's seat thinking, well, how am I going to set up camp to go to sleep? Because wherever the lion is, it's very, very close. Oh, sure. It gave me a fright. My heart was racing, and it still is to an extent. This is not what I expected, but I suppose I should have known it. There are lions here. Now there are definitely lions here, and they're close. If that lion comes wandering in, I'm not going to know it. And I don't want him to surprise me. I really don't. I've been in situations with lions before, but I've never been on my own, you see. So normally somebody would get out and probably sit on the roof rack with a bright torch and look around while other people set the camp up or do whatever's necessary, put stuff away, and get ready for a night's sleep. But I'm on my own. I feel a little uncomfortable walking around with my back to the bush. He's not far away. That's 100 to 150 meters maximum. So, not sure what to do. I'm now in the classical position of sitting in the spare wheel on the roof rack. Beautiful position to watch game. It's very, very dark. I can see very little, even with a very bright searchlight that I've got. The moon is coming up behind us. I don't think he's moved, and I think it's a he because this is a dry season. It's very likely that he's a loner, and he's calling, hoping that somebody, anybody, will answer him. And the reason why we haven't heard any other lion answering him is because there are none. The dry season means that the game has scattered and the lions have scattered with them. Lion's been calling non-stop now. It's about 2 hours later, and he's been calling, but getting quieter and quieter. I think he might be giving up or maybe going to sleep, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Well, it's 6:30, peaceful night. I'm woken by the crows and the yellow-billed hornbills feeding off the remnants of our dinner. The lions moved off. The next time I actually heard a call, I was drifting off to sleep, and I heard the last call, and it in fact had moved 180 degrees and had moved off some distance. So I'm pretty confident that he went looking elsewhere. So you might be asking, well, what's Andrew doing all on his own in a beautiful, pristine wilderness? Surely travelling on your own is not a normal way of travelling. Well, no, it isn't for me either. This is in fact an experiment. The idea came to me when reading about Tom Shepherd, one of my mentors, one of the writers of probably the best overland travel books by anybody. He does it in the Sahara. He takes his Kalandavag and disappears for 2 weeks, and nobody sees him. And I had to ask the question, why does he do it? So this for me, and this for you, is a bit of an experiment. How much fun is it travelling like this on your own? Now when I say on my own, I mean on my own. There is no camera crew around here. I'm using a small Canon with a really good little mic, and the entire film production is centered around this object. And I figure that for a person to really get away, they have to be on their own and find themselves in an area that is utterly devoid of other human beings. How easy is it to do that? Well, it's not easy to do that at all. The one option is hiking into the mountains, but then climbing becomes very dangerous on your own. Maybe with two of you, the danger is significantly less. But that's one option. The other option is trans-ocean sailing. The third option, available to us four-wheel drivers, is overland travel. So I welcome you to the wilderness, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I think I might. But now what do we let them down to? Because a lot of this is fairly firm. There are patches where the sand is really quite soft, so I've got to think and find a compromise. I think what I'm going to do is go down to 2 bar on the back and 1.5, maybe 1.8 on the front. This is the first bit of standing water I've seen since, well, on the trip. I wonder what makes this water. This is Morezwa Pan, the southwesternmost corner of the Kutsi Reserve, and this is to me the most spectacular part of the Kalahari, the enormous skies created by pans such as these. And in the middle of the pans not a thing grows, and if one would stay here for a little while, animals would come here because there won't be any other standing water for many miles around. And that, I would say, is large antelope, probably Gemsbok. I'm no tracker, but if you ask me, that is a lion footprint. And now I'm heading off to Kade. There is nothing for 238 kilometers, and it's just bush track. And it's extremely unlikely I will see anybody. For the first time, I'm feeling just a little bit nervous. It's a twinge of nervousness. I'm not sure what about, but it's there nevertheless. This is the Tropic of Capricorn. The line, the imaginary man-made line that indicates the middle of the southern hemisphere. Not much rain falls here. This is actually the first time I felt just ever so slightly nervous about the whole experience. The pans around us here are actually part of the Kutsi group and are managed by the wardens of the Kutsi Park. But up ahead of us, up north, from here to Kade, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. I think it's extremely unlikely that I will see another human being. I decided to check the tire pressures because the going in the sand is starting to get a little bit difficult. And of course, tyres are quite warm. And all of them I've done so far, yep, like one. The rear I let down to 2, they had gone up to 2.4, both of them. These were up at almost 2. So, well, 238 kilometers is going to take me, I don't know how long, I have to work it out. I'm averaging, probably cruising speed on these tracks 30 kilometers an hour. So that's quite a long time. I'm not sure if I'm going to get there today, but I'll see. I've just taken the distinct turn to the west, and I notice in front of us that the ground is black. I promised myself that I would reach this intersection before having lunch. It's 1:30. Outside temperature is about 32 Celsius, so I've made this temporary bit of shade, because there's the sun is directly overhead, so there's very little shade, but there is lunch, which consists today of some biscuits. I've got some cheese in the fridge, and there's a cold Coke in the fridge too. I think I'll have that. It's quite a worthwhile lunch stop, because I just discovered that this fridge, the main fridge, with most of my food in it, was not working, because the plug had pulled out. Something had obviously shifted. Now, I designed the plug so it was recessed, so that couldn't happen. It still happened. So I'm quite glad I stopped. Now, who can I ask how to open this cheese thing? Nobody about here. How do you open these things? I know, I'll write to them. Bad news. I've got a flat tire. That's all I need. Let's go and have a look. I think it's the right front. Yeah. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. That's destroyed. That's quite scary actually, because that tire now cannot be used, even when in the inner tube. Can't be repaired and can't be used. And I'm not even halfway. I'm going to try and reverse into some slightly harder ground here. Well, I've jacked it up. Yeah, looking at these tires, these are tires that are supposed to be all-terrain. What could have done that? What could have actually pulled the middle out of a tire like this? Anyway, the big question is, what do I do now? I mean, I can replace it, but I've only got one more spare. And this tire has been so badly damaged that I can't even fit a tube and keep it running. It is trash, complete trash. And I'm not even 1/3 of the way through the Central Kalahari. It's going to take some thinking about. I'm trying to take my own advice here, and that is to take regular breaks and drink lots and lots of water, because it's incredibly tiring work. And one of the things about when you're on your own, you have to do everything on your own, everything. Even picking up the camera and filming. And I'm absolutely knackered already, so lots and lots of water. about 110 kilometers from the Coetzee Reserve. We have to go approximately 340. Same kind of terrain, same kind of risk of punctures, or 100 back. This needs some thinking about. So what I think I'm going to do is finish changing the wheel, at least be mobile again, and then camp here. 3 o'clock, camp, think about it, look at the map, decide whether I continue. Doesn't look so good for my trip. Doesn't look so good. From where we had lunch to where we hold the tyre was 1.9 kilometers. What made the hole in the tyre? Because there was nothing wrong with the tyre at lunch. Something along here made this hole in the tyre. What? And I've already gone back about a kilometer. Can see nothing, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Just driven over this piece here. This is Mapani, and it's incredibly tough wood. It really is. It bends, but it doesn't break easily. This is dead. Now, a live or just dead piece of Mapani like this, sitting in the middle of the road, you drive into that, that can go straight into the sump, straight into the sidewall of a tyre. It's awful stuff. I was wondering if this might have been the cause of somewhere along the line, something like this ripped up our tyre. Maybe the reason why this has happened, and I can't continue on the trip. We are not even 1/3 of the way across the Central Kalahari Reserve, and I have to ask the question: would I set off with only one spare? No, I wouldn't. Secondly, I don't trust these tyres. I see the vehicles that are driving in the park. So in the southern end of the park there are a few vehicles, and they're all driving with 6-ply sidewall tyres. There's a reason for it. These 2-ply sidewalls, they're just not going to crack it. I don't even know if a 3-ply would be that safe here. Certainly better. But if it had been just a simple puncture, a thorn, I could fix it here. But that tyre is destroyed completely. So it's as if it doesn't exist. Would I travel across the desert on my own, carrying one spare and suspect tyres? No, I wouldn't. I have to ask, has the experiment of travelling on my own been a success or a failure? I can't see it's been a failure, because we didn't have a predetermined outcome. It was an experiment to see what would happen. I don't think I've enjoyed being alone as much as I thought I would. Lying in my sleeping bag last night, underneath the stars, brilliant Milky Way. I had some thinking to do, and I decided that the proper course of action now would be, the prudent course of action is to not continue through the Central Kalahari. I'm actually going to turn back. It's just too risky on my own. And I have a deadline to keep. I know this kind of travel, one shouldn't have a deadline, but family are expecting me to contact them in 4 days' time at the southernmost part of the reserve, where there is cell phone coverage, at a town called Rockops. I can't risk not making that rendezvous. Imagine how they're going to worry. They'll send out search parties and that kind of thing. It's too risky with no second spare tyre. It's as simple as that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head south again. I've got 100 kilometers of that really, really rough road back to Coetzee. I'm going to spend a couple of days in Coetzee, and then for that rendezvous, then head back toward Gaborone and then make the call. From there, I'll then decide if I continue. I've often been in campsites where there have been other people around, and they've come up to me and recognized me and said, hey, and then they've started to poke around my campsite because they're interested in my gear, my equipment. And so maybe we should just quickly do that this morning. There are not a lot of very, very new items that I have on the vehicle, but maybe I should show you a few of them that I really, really enjoy. The first one is this. I've never used one of these before in terms of covering a spare wheel, yes, but a spare wheel cover with an actual purpose, no. Braai grids, cooking grids, all the dirty stuff go in there, and of course the rubbish goes in there. Fantastic, really, really well. Really, normally if my spare wheel has a cover, I take it off and leave it at home on a trip like this because they get dirty and grimy and what do you do with them? You don't need them. They're just really for protecting the rubber from the sun when, over long periods of time, not over 2 or 3 weeks. The water tank might interest you. I've featured this on other programs of mine. I have a water tank with a tap, and there's my tap. And it makes all the difference to being convenient around the camp. Let's have a look inside the vehicle. It's probably a big mess right now. GPS, nothing special there. My center console is really quite nice. I built it between the seats to put drinks cans, and then on the flat top of the dashboard I built this very nice flat storage area, and I put carpet. See, this is my cell phone here, which I play music. All my chargers, my cell phone included, have Velcro on the back, so if I put them down, they don't fall about. What I would do before setting off is to put on the grass net. This is basically to prevent grass seeds going into the radiator and causing overheating. This is one that I bought in the shops, but I am convinced that the people that actually design these things don't actually use them, because it's all wrong in terms of its size. It's supposed to fit like that, but if it fits like that, it's not long enough. Grass seeds get in from underneath. You get some here, probably 20% here, and you get 80% underneath. So if anything, a grass seed net should do the job by protecting underneath the radiator, more so than on top. So I added these pieces here, very, very simple piece of aluminium, and then I hook it in through the hook there, and then I hook it onto that, and I do the same with the other side. Cruiser's bonnet has a hump, and it causes a lot of light to be reflected from this side of the hump here right into my eyes. And so I got some automotive black film and I placed it on this side, and it's cut down the reflections quite considerably. I must now conclude what happened to this tyre. If you look at the still pictures during the lunch break, the tyre was flat, not completely flat. It looked at about 50%. I zeroed the odor at that point. 1 kilometer, 1.9 kilometers, I beg your pardon, from that point to the point where the tyre went flat was the time that this sidewall was destroyed. And normally, when a sidewall is destroyed, it's at high speed. High speed, the tyre flattens, and during the slowing down period from whatever to standstill, that's the time when the sidewall is damaged and cut by the rim. 1.9 kilometers at 20 kilometers an hour? Doesn't make sense to me. I think, and I'm not sure, I suspect that these particular tyres are unsuitable. I certainly have a question about their suitability for overland, serious overland travel.